want to speak today about property rights and eminent domain. Once upon a time, we had a philosophy in this country and in this state that the only time government could take your property was when there was a just public use for it. Now, public use didn't mean that a private corporation wanted to use the rights to your land or wanted to take your land to build upon or to make a profit from. Public use meant stuff that would generally benefit all people, all citizens. We've fallen away from that concept today. The Supreme Court has allowed big corporations to go in with the threat of eminent domain and take people's land away to build strip malls. They think that's perfectly acceptable. And at one point we said here in Iowa that it's not acceptable. But unfortunately, today we find ourselves asking that question. Is it acceptable for a corporation in Texas to use the heavy hand of big government through political influence to take the rights to farmers' land so they can make a profit from it? A few years ago, this would have been unthinkable that the state of Iowa would even consider giving the rights to farmers' land to a corporation so they could make a profit. Now, I don't have any problem with building a pipeline, so long as the company that builds that pipeline justly pays the Iowa farmers whose farmland it's going to run through, and so long as they don't rely on the taxpayers to pay for any damages that their pipeline may cause. I have no problem with that. What I do take exception with is when they are not able to come to an agreement with the farmers and they decide that, well, that's okay, we will just go through and we will get the big government powers to go in there and send in men with guns to declare eminent domain and force these farmers to give up their land rights. I do take exception with that. And this is not public use. This is a big corporation in Texas using its political influence that it has to go in and steal land. Bottom line. At one point here in Iowa, we really valued personal freedoms and property rights, and we put on our Iowa flag, and our state motto was, "Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain." One of the reasons when I was first considering running for governor that I wanted to run is the fact that we no longer prize our liberties. We've forgotten how important personal freedom is in this state. We used to be one of the most free states, and now we're somewhere in the middle of the pack. And one by one, we have lost our liberties. We have allowed big corporations to use political influence to trample on the rights of the Iowa citizens. I want to get back to that point where we ask ourselves, with every law that gets passed, with every regulation that gets passed, we need to ask ourselves, does this make us more or less free? Does this violate the rights of Iowans? And unfortunately, for far too long, we've elected politicians that don't care if it violates your rights. And that's when we get into dangerous ideas and concepts, such as thinking that the government can take away your property, or that the voters can vote to take away your property because maybe they want to build a casino where your property is. Maybe they want to build a strip mall where your property is. It's unthinkable. And our founding fathers set up a system that was to prevent that. You know, the King of England doesn't own your property. The governor of Iowa doesn't own your property. The majority of voters don't own your own property. You own your own property. And the idea that a corporation would ever take your property to make profit from it by using political connections flies in the face of everything that makes this state great. And so it's time that we end property rights abuses in this state. It's time that we get government and big corporations teaming up to take your property. It's time we end that. It is time we end the influence of big corporations have in our government. It is time we start to protect your personal rights. It is time we end eminent domain abuse, and it is time we end the abuses on the civil liberties of violence.